Alright, Old is the new film by writer-director M. Night Shyamalan. If you're unfamiliar with M. Night Shyamalan, he is the guy that's responsible for the great gems of filmmaking in The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Split, Glass for the most part, in my personal opinion. And now his newest film is Old, which is basically groupings of families that go on vacation on an island and they get suckered into a certain part of the island where they end up aging very rapidly, and it's basically just a survival thriller with that as the main premise. So my personal viewpoint on M. Night Shyamalan and his filmmaking is, for the most part, I do love him as a filmmaker, more specifically as a writer. Like I said, he has made excellent gems in The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable. Split is my all-time favorite M. Night Shyamalan film. Even Glass didn't compare to Split. Split was just phenomenal filmmaking at its finest. It was an excellently written thriller. It had excellent performances. It had such an intriguing premise. And the main character who was the villain was actually sympathized with, and you could understand his struggle being a mental patient, and they went through signs of his characters, all like 23 or whatever, and his kidnapping of the girls, and basically the lore behind his character and the beast and the main central story. And I just love everything about Split. Then Glass came along, and I still like the superhero storyline within Glass. I can understand the other critiquings of it, though, with it just kind of being more melodramatic and bland compared to Split. Now with Old, I can still say relatively the same stuff that are positives about Split as I can say about Old. It has a very intriguing and unique premise. For the most part, the writing is stellar when the writing actually works. And those are the best parts of Old, is when the writing works with the narrative and the premise. The narrative, the story, the central story itself is just extremely unique and actually just new. I really enjoyed the premise of Old. I strongly disliked everything inside the filmmaking of Old. I think that M. Night Shyamalan should have stuck to being just the writer for Old and let somebody else direct it, let somebody else produce it, basically have an actual grouping of people be the editors, the producers, and a director, instead of him trying to helm everything. Because I think that's where the faults in Old lie. It's that M. Night Shyamalan, he has a reputation for making great films, starting to be glorified after making great films, and then I don't know if it's narcissism that gets in the way, or he just gets clouded by maybe his own pursuits of happiness in filmmaking. I don't know, but I know when he makes a gem of a film, he usually makes pretty crappy films after. And I'm not saying that Old is crappy. It's not. It's actually a pretty good thriller. It just has a lot of technical problems, mainly being the acting, which just everything about Old feels so uneven. So there will be some moments of good acting, some moments of absolutely terrible acting. I don't fully blame the actors, though. It's the dialogue. The dialogue, it's not so much cringeworthy as it is laughable. I'm literally in the theater earlier at dramatic points, and just the dialogue, how the dialogue is written, meant to be more suspenseful, meant to be more riveting, more thrilling, just made me laugh out loud. And I had people that were beside me, and I was trying not to laugh too loud, but I had to bust up laughing a lot of the times where everybody else was just sitting there. The dialogue was just laughable at best. I wouldn't say it was anywhere near cringeworthy, just how M. Night wrote the dialogue in this film was just funny. It's not bad, it's just unintentionally funny, which you could say that's bad. Okay, that's fine. At least it's not cringeworthy, just god-awful dialogue. No, it was just funny, laughable dialogue. Unintentional laughable dialogue. So, into the editing, the unevenness for the editing, it felt like scene for scene was just stitched together. The story as a whole mostly worked together as an actual film, but it wasn't cohesive. The narrative really got in its own way and shot itself in its own foot. So, in a narrative where the logic is centered around time, there are just so many logical fallacies within the narrative for time itself. Just so many, and I'm not going to spoil anything. I do believe you should go watch Old for yourself and then have your own opinion, but be objective while being subjective about it, and understand that there are many bad logical fallacies in the filmmaking of Old. I appreciate the positives, because there are high positives in Old, but there are also simultaneously very bad negatives to Old in the editing, which just felt stitched. Everything felt just stitched and put together, not really in a cohesive way. The acting just kind of felt like there should have been more, but it felt like people were being held down from the potential they could have used and done in this film. The writing, and especially the dialogue, extremely laughable, but there is definitely potential in Old if they had just kept it as M. Night Shyamalan writing it, putting his main focus on the writing, and then hire different people to do different outlets for the filmmaking. Have a different director, have different producers, have different editors, because like I said, M. Night Shyamalan basically did every role to make this film. When the credits started at the beginning and when they started at the end, M. Night Shyamalan was basically plastered in everything. And that was the biggest fault of Old. It was, he helmed it too much. He should have just stuck to the writing. I think that would have made a more solid film overall. So overall for me, Old is tolerable until you start dissecting it. It's a very intriguing and original piece of story that ultimately stumbles and just kind of rolls over itself. So Old for me is a 6 out of 10. Thank you.